All right. Where are we? Are we here? Connecting sound. Ooh, okay. I think we're here. Okay, let me let me compose myself a little bit. Uh, it's kind of crazy if you watch at my original videos when I started live streaming, which was it wasn't that long ago. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, I think. I don't know. But you can totally tell, like all this gray hair and the beard, everything was so much darker. It's like, it's like YouTube is aging me or something. I don't know, which is obviously not true. Um, Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing? I'm very happy to be here. What? Oof, let me. I haven't really thought this through. Okay, let's start with the basics. Hi, if you're new to the channel, my name is Jose Luis. We are here at Parametric Camp. We do computational design live streams. So we go live, I would like to say every Friday, but it hasn't been like that lately. I have, though, made myself a very strong commitment. I'm going to show you. I have this like list of things that I want to do. These are green stickers, by the way. This list of things that I want to do this month. And in the list, it is streaming every single week. So here we are then. Now, what do? We live stream here, we go online, we record tutorials on different topics around computational design. Typically, we make projects together, we code them, we build them here live, and then we edit them and we publish them as slightly more refined videos. Not a lot more refined, but you know. Anyway, if you want to follow more of what we do, please go here. We have social media. We used to be particularly active on Instagram. I'm kind of falling out of Instagram lately. It's also very difficult to automate Instagram unless you pay for a premium business account, which is kind of whatever. So yeah, so we haven't posted a lot lately, but we should actually go back to that. And then, but we do have a Discord that is fairly active and where we have conversations throughout the week. And if you want to find that Discord, there's a link on the description of this video. Also, if you want to know when we go live, it's pretty much Fridays in the morning of Boston time. I live in Boston. So 9 a.m. typically, around 9 a.m. East Coast time, whatever that might find you. But if you want to make sure you don't miss out, there's also a link to a Google Calendar that you can subscribe to, and then notifications of when do we go live will show up on your calendar in bright, bright red, like this background. Alrighty. So, and then what are we going to do today? Tim, hey, hello, long time no see. Very good to see you. What are we going to do today? Well, first of all, I want to show you a couple things. What I want to show you. Oh, I'm very excited. My partner got me recently, I never showed you this. She got me this really, really cool black notebook. And I really, really like drawing on black notebooks. And she also bought me this collection of gel, bright color gel pens that you can use on black. So I've been using it to draw diagrams and computational stuff. It's actually backwards. Are you seeing it? You're seeing it backwards. Yes. Mirrored. Anyway, I've been really nerding out with this whole negative drawing kind of situation. Very cool. And also, many of you, if you follow this channel, you may have heard in the past that I got last year or 2 years ago, I got into fabric crafts. In particular, I've been doing crochet. This was caused by a student of mine who wanted to make a crochet machine. And then she basically got me into learning how to crochet. And then for some reason that I connected with that. So I've been doing a lot of, but I've been expanding. So it turns out that I live right next door to a wonderful shop that basically caters to everyone who likes fabric crafts. So they sell yarn, they sell fabrics, they teach you how to crochet, knit, yarn, sewing. And I recently took a sewing class, a basic sewing class, and I made this. I made a tote bag. I made it myself. I sewed the thing. It has a white lining with some muslin. This is called muslin fabric. I also learned that. It has the handles. How awesome. I made this by myself, except for the fabric. The fabric I bought it, right? But how cool is this, huh? Anyway, I just wanted to show you folks. I'm kind of liking fabric stuff. I don't know why. Do any of you have some kind of crafty hobby that is not entirely related to computers and nerdy stuff? If you do, you're more than welcome to share on the chat window here, on the Discord server, whatever that might find you. Hey, Corte, Forges, I think you've been here before, right? Hello. And Marine Mentor, I don't know that we've met. I don't know that we've seen you before, but very much welcome to the channel, of course. Now, in more practical terms, what are we doing today? So let me switch to, what are we? Yes, so let me switch to the channel. So yes, we are live right now, and there's 11 of you watching. And if you remember, in the past few live streams, we've been working on this informal playlist that I kind of started because I wanted to record some videos for my class, the class that I teach here at the university. We were recording a few videos on different techniques to do web-based drawing. So I think I would like to record a small video today also for this playlist. I think what this might end up being, I think the video that I would like to make today is going to be about vector drawing. So in this video, we were learning how to draw with a continuous brush, so mimicking kind of like Photoshop, if you will. In this one, what were we doing here? In this one, we were learning how to draw lines, how to draw shapes. So if I remember correctly, and then we did an example, just an exercise on that. So what I would like to do today is I would like to code another example where it's going to be similar to the click and drag metaphor, but what we're going to do though is that we are going to keep some kind of memory object that is going to contain information about all the objects and their colors and their shape and their geometry, so that we can always re-render that, so that we can actually modify things, and so that we can export the document, import the document, and go back and forth. So that should be really cool, actually. So I do have an example. I just don't know. So is that clear? Is everyone cool with that? So basically today we're going to make a web-based drawing app that is kind of going to feel like Illustrator more than Photoshop's perhaps, which is what we might have been doing in the past. So, so what are we going? I'm going to start a live server, and the live server, I don't want this, I want this, and the draw with click and drag, drawing click and drag full, and this one, and drawing click and drag full. In this one, we basically have this buffer that we're using to basically just draw dead pixels, if you will, here. Yeah. So I need to think actually, how are we going to do this? Hey, Mesarat, how you doing? Should I move myself to the other side? Wait. Hello. Ooh, 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 ooh. Now, should I move myself here for these videos? Is this place better? Yes, because if I have the code over here, right, it's probably better to have here, unless I'm going to be printing stuff to the console. We don't know about that. I don't know. Should I just be both places? All right, let me stay here for the time being. Okay, focus. First of all, I need to decide how are we going to transition from the last video, which was this, which was click and drag and drawing. And we need to decide how to move from there to something that when we release, instead of drawing to the buffer, what we do is we just add these objects to some kind of document model. And I also need to rewrite what's going to be the starter project for this. It's also very important. So we need to decide that. And then once we decide that, we can start coding. Feels strange after so many hours on the right. Right? I think so too. I kind of agree. And also the other videos on this playlist, I am on this corner. So yeah, I think we're stuck with this. All right. So we have, this is click and drag full, correct? And why do we have a shape size? This does not make sense. Because we are deleting, here, we are deleting, and that's how we are, okay. And shape color, shape size is now that, yes, okay. And then if we change colors, then for example, let's say we draw a circle, a rectangle, no, a square. Okay, I see. Okay. And we have the saving. So if we press F, it just saves what we have here. Okay. So because we already have this, perhaps the smart way to go about this would be, to extend and to modify this project. Because if folks are watching from the previous, video, then it would just make sense to continue. Okay. All right, so then what am I going to do? I'm going to copy this, I'm going to paste it, and this is going to be called click and drag vector start. And hopefully, yeah, vector start, okay. And in vector start, I'm going to make a few changes here. I'm going to say, well, first of all, I hate that I chose this. So for shapes, I'm going to do E for ellipse, R for rectangle. Okay, so that's going to be delete. We're not going to have delete anymore. The shape size, also, I don't think it makes a lot of sense anymore. Yeah. And we probably have white, why not? And here we have alpha. We can probably have white, yes. So we have that. This is going to be, I'm trying to ellipse. Okay, and then here ellipse, rectangle. Okay, so we have ellipse, and then we have white. No, are we still? Okay. Why is W not working? Interesting, that's very weird. Shape color, W. Okay. And if I do this, it's not working. Interesting. But if I do this, sorry folks, I'm trying to debug something here. And if I do this, oh, I'm still somewhere else. Okay, all right. Click and drag. Okay, so I need to update this vector style. Okay, now we're talking. All right. Okay. And circle shape mode, ellipse, shape mode, rectangle. Okay. And then we now make white, and now rectangle is working. Okay. Beautiful. So I think, yes. So drawing vector start, and that is going to be okay, so added vector drawing start project. Okay. Tim, the URL path, you were right. Yes, I was in the wrong file. You're right. Hey Lamarash, very good to see you. Okay. Okay. All right. So how are we going to start this? We're going to start it by copying this. We're going to paste it, and we're going to rename this full. And then we're going to stop the server because otherwise Visual Studio Code just doesn't let you draw in vector full. All right. So we're going to start from a project that is very similar to the one that we did in the previous video, which is this draw with click and drag. Now, the metaphor, what we're going to do is that here we remember what we were doing was that in order to be able to delete things, actually I deleted that. If delete, okay, so I'm going to bring this back, and then else if key equals, yeah, shape mode delete. Oh my god. Why didn't I save this? This is in vector start. Ah, All right. Okay, fine. Okay, so I'm going to go to vector full, sorry for the confusion, and here. All right, and now I can delete. Okay, all right, beautiful. So then the way I'm going to start raising the project is we have the project. It's very similar to what we did before. And the reason why we can do this is because we're basically drawing shapes into a background buffer. Those shapes become pixels, and because they become pixels, I can aggregate and change them, and etc. etc. Now what we're going to do though is we're going to shift the model of how this is working, and instead of working with a buffer graphics that is basically a collection of pixels, and then every time we draw something we basically turn on and off the pixels, what we're going to do is we're going to switch to a model where we actually have a database of all the shapes and all the geometry that we want to render, and then every frame we're going to be rendering that information. The advantages of this are going to be, I'm basically like right now rehearsing what I'm going to say. The advantages of this are that we basically maintain that database of vector information for these shapes that will make things easier if we want to, for example, modify, scale, change these objects. If we want to export them as vector information, if we want to export them as SVGs, for example, I don't know, and then also to import them as well. It will also make them easy, but we will lose that capacity to basically delete delete as if it was a brush. So it's going to be creating something that is closer to Illustrator, if you will. Thank you, Masa. I'm happy you enjoy them. Is it your first time in the channel? Let us know where you're coming from. Why? How did you found us? How did you find us? Etc. etc. Okay. All right. Beautiful. So that, yes. And then we're going to do this, and then we will export. Okay. I think I got it. I think I do have a mental roadmap of what I want to do. Okay. Okay. Are we ready for this, folks? Alrighty. so, all right. Okay. And what am I going to do? I'm going to introduce the concept. I'm going to introduce this concept. And then what is the first thing that I'm going to do? The first thing that I'm going to do is that I'm basically going to leave things as they are. But I'm going to create this database, this document model, if you will. Okay? And then I'm going to render it immediately. I'm going to hard code an example of that, actually. Excuse me. I'm going to hard code an example of that. And then we will make the example interactive. And then I'm going to leave the buffer stuff around for the time being. And all of this is going to be the same. All of this is going to be the same. Yes. All of this is going to be the same. And this I can probably just do a one-liner because it takes up a lot of space. Okay. It takes up a lot of space, yes. Okay. All right, folks, I'm still mentally preparing for this because, you know, when we hit on, we have to go, right? Okay. All right. And I did remove the click and drag full. I did remove the, yeah, I mean, why, I'm just going to keep it here for the time being. We may use it, I don't know. Shape size, yeah, I don't know. We may use it. Maybe, I don't know. Vector, drawing vector full, yes, okay. 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 All right, let's do this. I'm ready. Fantastic. So let's get started. As we typically do, what you can see in my screen is that I have a project that I'm working on Visual Studio Code. I am running a live server. I don't know if you can see it here. And the live server is running this sketch on my browser. And if you want to learn more about how I'm doing this, please feel welcome to watch the previous videos on this series. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start off a very similar file, almost identical to the one that we were using in the previous video in this series, where we were learning how to do web-based drawing apps using a click and drag metaphor. All right. If you haven't watched it, I strongly recommend you do before watching this one. A card with a link to this video is going to be popping up on the corner on the top, and there will probably be a link to that video as well in the description of this video. You can always go back to the playlist. It's going to be right before this one, okay? If you remember, in that example, what we did was we had this metaphor of I'm going to click, I'm going to drag, and then I'm going to be drawing shapes on the screen. I can change between different modes. So from ellipse mode, I can change by pressing R. I can change to rectangle mode, or by pressing L, I can change to line mode, correct? And if you remember as well, we could also delete by pressing D and doing this kind of delete or erase kind of approach to drawing, which feels very Photoshop-like, all right? The main difference between the example that we did in the previous video and the one that we're going to be doing in this one is that the technique that we used in the previous video was to have a graphics buffer somewhere in memory where we were virtually drawing all these objects, and anytime we drew an object to that graphics memory, that object, that rectangle, that circle, that ellipse, whatever, it just became a bunch of pixels in this graphics buffer in the memory. And then every time we draw the screen, we take that buffer, we turn it into an image, and then we render all those pixels on the screen. This method is one that is very common and very useful when you want to do Photoshop-like interaction where you are not so concerned about shapes or the vector geometry of those shapes, but what you want is manipulation at the level of the pixels. And that is the reason why, for example, we could do this kind of interaction where we delete these shapes because their shapes are not really shapes anymore. The moment we draw them in the graphics buffer, they become basically dead pixels that we can turn on and off, right? So that's why it looks like more Photoshop-like, if you will. What I would like to do in this video is change a little bit of that metaphor, and then instead of working with something that is perhaps more oriented to manipulating pixels and working with those pixels one at a time, what I would like to do is change the model and work with an app that does have a notion or a sense or a memory, if you will, of actual shapes with their coordinates, with their sizes, and instead of saving them in memory as pixels with colors, which is what we're doing here using a graphics buffer, what is saving them, or the way it's representing them in memory, is with their actual shape names, an ellipse, a circle, a line, with their coordinates, where the points start and end, with the sizes. And this metaphor is going to have several advantages. If we use this metaphor, if we keep these objects in memory, then manipulating these objects as objects, so for example, doing things such as clicking on a rectangle, moving the rectangle around, scaling it, etc., will be much, much easier than if we have to do that operation working with every single one of the pixels of that rectangle. It will also make it much easier to, for example, export the document as a bunch of numbers representing all these shapes and all these coordinates and all these sizes. And it will also basically bring us closer to this metaphor of vector manipulation and vector creation of shapes. So it will make the app kind of feel and behave a little closer to perhaps Adobe Illustrator than it does behave closer to Adobe Photoshop, for example. The drawbacks of switching to this different metaphor is that doing this kind of pixel manipulation where we actually erase and manipulate the shapes at a pixel level will become harder. It's not impossible, but it will become much more difficult, all right? So what I would like you to do is I would like you to get a taste of what both ways of designing this app look like. And that's why in the previous video, we built this Photoshop-like kind of drawing app. And in this one, I would like to build more like an Illustrator or vector-based drawing app. So how are we going to do this? Well, the way we're going to do this is we're going to move away from this graphic buffer sort of way of drawing things on the screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a document model. Or in other words, we're going to create in our memory here, we're going to create a variable that is going to be called document, for example. And in that variable, as an object, we're going to start storing all the information for all the shapes, all the colors, and everything that we want to keep in memory. And then every time we draw, instead of drawing the graphic buffer, which is going to be these pixels that we are manipulating somewhere in memory, instead of printing them on the screen, what we're going to do is with a large for loop, we're going to go through all the objects that we have stored in that document model, and we're going to render them one by one. All right? Okay, this sounded a little complicated, so let me show you actually what that would look like if we write the code. Okay, let's get started. All right, was that clear? Or was that a lot of talking? That was probably a lot of talking anyway. Alrighty, so then what are we going to do? So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to restart the app, and then I'm going to start right away creating the document object model. And then we're going to transition slowly into that model. And then we're going to draw some shapes already using that model, all right? And then we will remove the buffer drawing and we will connect the buffer drawing metaphor or clicking and dragging with, we're going to connect that with adding shapes to the document model, all right? Seriously, Ramesh? Can we play it slow? Well, I mean, it was a lot of talking, but it will be much easier to see when it's actually done. The funny thing is that you say you want to play the video slower, whereas what I have found is that most people actually play these videos, they speed them up because they want to see action. Younger people, the younger generations, they have a very good capacity to swallow very fast information. You know, it's kind of crazy. I walk sometimes over the school and I see my students watching my videos at like 125, at 1.5. I just don't know how they do it. All right. But you're right. I also resonate with the idea of in-depth explanations. That's pretty much what I want to do. What I want to do in this channel. Okay. We love long form content. Don't worry, I got a lot of that for you. All right. So then we're going to restart here. And we're going to save here. Okay, and then we're going to start, and I'm going to start by saying that as usual, there is the starter project and the full version, which I'm going to be building right now. And then we're going to start by drawing, by starting the, let me say this again. We're going to start by creating this document model. All right? Okay, beautiful. All right, before we do that, would you mind if I actually take a small break and get some water? I will be right back. Give me 1 minute. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. Hydration Nation. You guys are very entertaining, I must say. Mhm. AI and Grasshopper. Ooh, that's a very good one. Yep, we can definitely do that. We actually started a Grasshopper plugin for AI. We put that project on hold because there were other topics I wanted to cover. But yeah, we will probably go back to that at some point. All right. Where were we? We were here. Okay. So, yes. So I'm going to talk again about the project starter, where to find it, and the document. We're going to start the document. Okay. Fantastic. Let's do this. As usual, if you want to follow this video along, I recommend you go to our GitHub repository. You can find a link to the code in the description of this video. And then I'm going to start from the project called Drawing Vector Start. So that is all the code that you're seeing right now on the screen. And then if you want to see the full thing already working, you will find it under the project Drawing Vector Full. All right? Beautiful. So the first thing that we're going to do is, before I start erasing or changing anything from the graphic buffer, what I would like to do is I would like to start building that document model that I was describing. I will hard code a few examples of how it will work. We will mix the two metaphors, the two ways of drawing the document model and the buffer, and then we will slowly transition and change things from the graphics buffer back to the document model. All right, that was a lot of talking. Just follow along with me. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a document model. What that basically means is I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it, for example, doc. And that's going to be an object that is going to contain a lot of information about my drawing. All right. In this, think about this as a database of all the possible information that represents the drawing that I'm at. You may want to store in the future like the size of the window. If you have properties like the name of the author, blah, blah, you can store whatever you want. But the main object that I would like to store is one that is going to be called shapes, and it's going to start as an empty array. Okay, this is going to be an array where I'm going to start adding one by one as I draw. I'm going to start drawing objects that represent shapes with particular properties, XY coordinates, width and height, etc., etc. And actually, before we draw any of these interactive shapes, what I would like to do is I would like to show you how this object could look like once we actually fill it in with real-time information. So for example, I'm going to add a first object, and you can see that that Copilot is already giving me suggestions. I'm going to fill it with an object which is going to start with, I'm going to add a few properties that are going to represent this object. So for example, I'm going to add one that is going to be called type. And for this particular object, I'm going to make it an ellipse, right? Then I'm going to give it some coordinates, x and y, so that might be the coordinates of the center, right? And then width and height. And I'm going to change these values, so the width is going to be 75, and then these coordinates are going to be 400, and these are going to be 200, for example, okay? With this information, with this object that contains the type, the x and y, etc., etc., I think this is enough information for me to be able to properly and completely draw this object, except perhaps for the color. So for example, you can see that here, color is going to be 00127, for example. That's perfectly fine, all right? Okay, so I'm actually going to call this the fill color because we may want to store at some point the stroke width, the stroke color. So I'm actually going to call it fill color, just like that, all right? Beautiful. Another object, maybe I'm going to add a second one, could be a rectangle at coordinates 200 and 200 with width 75, height 75, and the fill color, this one is going to be, for example, red. And this, I'm going to make it green, okay? So those could be two ways I can store in memory these shapes, all right? And then what I would like to do then is, if I have a document, an object that contains an array with a lot of shapes, the best way to render those shapes on the screen is going to be here under draw. We're going to say draw shapes from the document. And then what we're going to do is we're going to basically go with a for loop. We're going to iterate over all the shapes in the document object. And then we're going to do this thing. We're going to say, I'm going to pick up one by one. So this is going to be the shape, all right? And then what I'm going to do is with a large conditional, depending on this type of this shape, I'm going to draw a rectangle, I'm going to draw an ellipse, or I'm going to draw whatever that might be. So I'm going to say, I'm going to switch, and I'm going to basically make a very large conditional where I'm going to do different things based on the type of this shape. Remember, every shape is going to have a property called type, which is going to be a string representing what this is, okay? And then, for example, let's start. If this is an ellipse, what I would like to do is I would like to say no stroke, and then the fill color is going to be whatever property fill color is inside of this shape, which remember is an object with these types, so X, Y, W, H, etc., etc., right? So, and then what I'm going to do is, because shape has these properties, the X location, the Y location, the width, and the height, then those are the ones that I'm going to use to draw this particular ellipse, okay? And then I'm going to stop here. Then I'm going to add another case. For example, if this is a rectangle, I also want to draw no stroke, fill color, and then I'm going to draw a rectangle with this X location, Y location, this width, and this height. All right? And you can see how Google Copilot, not Google, GitHub Copilot is actually helping me write this very fast. All right? So I'm going to save this. And the moment I save, you can already see that in my document, in my canvas, these two shapes that I have stored here with XY properties show up on the screen, right? So I can make this a little larger, for example, and you can see that this is going to be bigger, and they overlap, etc., right? Beautiful. So this is just the beginning of that document object model that I was describing before. The document object model basically being a variable that has a bunch of properties, the main one being an array that I'm calling shapes that contains a collection of objects, each one of which has enough information for me to know what type of object it is, where the coordinates, the size, etc., etc. And therefore, for drawing them, I just have to go with a for loop over each one of the shapes, and then depending on the type, and this can be very rich, we can add here polylines, splines, images, depending on whatever it is, I decide how to take that shape and then how to render it with different functions. Does this make sense? Beautiful. If that makes sense, then what I would like to do now is, instead of hard coding this, what I would like to do is I would like to start empty and then be able to now connect the drawing, the real-time drawing that I was doing before, this one, connected with this document object model. Or in other words, when I draw here, instead of drawing to the graphics buffer, what I would like to do is I would like to add a new object to this array, add the information to that object, and then draw it always constantly. Okay? Let's take a look at how to do that. All right, D-Back, it's been a while. How are you doing? We should have met the colors and draw on a dark canvas. That is totally true. Current studying C#, very good teacher. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ali. All right. So how are we going to do this? What we're going to do is we're going to scroll down, and in the place where we draw, in the place where we click and we draw stuff, instead of drawing to the buffer, what we're going to do is we're going to create an object that we're going to add to the shapes. Okay, let's do that. If you remember from the previous video, the way we were actually drawing these shapes to the screen was by working with the mouse interaction. And then we had this section where we said whenever the mouse is released, then figure out which shape mode am I right now. And then in the buffer, draw an ellipse, draw a rectangle, draw a line, whatever you do, but draw it on the buffer, or in other words, on this virtual canvas with pixels that we had in memory, right? So this was the way we added, let's say, permanent drawings to our canvas, by basically drawing them to the buffer. Now, what we want to do is we don't want to use the buffer anymore, so I'm going to cancel this out. Where is this? I'm going to cancel this out. And what I would like to do is, once we release the mouse, what I would like to do is add to this array of shapes, add another object that is going to be of the type whatever the shape mode we are drawing at that time, which is going to have whatever fill color we are working with at that time. And then the X and Y and the width and the height are going to be whatever calculation we make based on the clicking pattern that we have followed. Does that make sense? So I'm going to basically start here with I'm going to start with a switch case. I'm also going to go into, which is going to depend on shape mode, all right? And shape mode, remember, is that variable that is telling us based on our clicking, based on whether if we hit E, R, L, whatever, what kind of shape we are drawing right now. Okay, so we're going to start with the ellipse. If we're doing an ellipse, all right, so what we want to do is we want to create an object. I'm going to call this obj shape that is going to be of the type ellipse, all right? Then the coordinate is going to be whatever we clicked first time, the Y is going to be whatever we clicked last time, and then the width is going to be the difference between where we clicked, and then the height is also going to be the difference between the vertical coordinates of where did we click. All right? I'm actually not sure if this is going to work. I'm actually not sure if this is going to work because that was Copilot filling in. All right, and then we will want to add this shape to doc.shapes. We would like to push this shape to that. So let's try if this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag, and the moment I let go, boom, something did not work. Oh, we don't have a valid color representation because I forgot to add the fill color to this object. So I'm going to try again now. So I'm going to drag, and the moment I let go, this shape now stays. And if we actually want to see what is going on, because doc here is a global variable, it turns out that doc is going to be available in my console as well. So I can literally type doc, and if I type doc, you're going to see that I get a print down of everything that is in the, so I get the array of shapes. Sorry, I get the array of shapes, and the first object is this object ellipse with all these coordinates and this color, right? So if I now change, for example, to, if I press, what was it, uppercase P, that's going to be pink, and then I can draw another rectangle here, another ellipse, and then if I type here doc, you can see that doc is now an object, sorry, that has an array of 5 elements, and each one of them is an ellipse with different coordinates and different colors. All right, fantastic. So let's do the rectangle part as well. So I'm going to fill in here, and I'm going to say case rectangle. Okay, so I'm going to create a shape that is going to be the type rectangle. The X and Y are going to be the same. The color is going to be the shape color, right? And then I'm going to push that shape, and then I'm going to stop here. All right, beautiful. You are seeing that I am getting this error. The error being that I cannot declare another variable with the same name because it's already declaring the same scope. This is something that happens with switch statements. The context is the same for all the cases. So actually what I can do is I can clean this up a little bit and make it a bit more elegant, because we actually have kind of duplicate code here. So what I can do is I can define here the shape object, and then this one is going to be redefined differently in each one of the cases. And then what I can also do is, because I know that every single time I'm just going to want to create a new object and push it to the shapes, so I can just do that once at the end of the shape. So all right, so now I'm going to do this stays here, and then I'm going to press R. I'm going to switch to rectangle mode, and you can see that rectangles are already drawn. And if I now inspect the object, I have 8 elements, 8 shapes. The first 4 are ellipses, and the last 4 are rectangles. And I can still switch to different colors, right? And then if I do this again, doc, you can see that now I have 12 objects, each one of them different shapes and different colors, correct? Beautiful. So we do have now a proper document object model so that whenever we draw shapes, those shapes get added to this master object that contains all the information, and then it gets drawn to the screen. Each one of those shapes gets drawn to the screen with this for loop, right? If that's the case, I think we're already ready to basically get rid of any graphic buffer stuff. So let me do that actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up. So now we only have this, then buffer is also going to disappear. All right, I'm going to just clear the background. I'm actually going to clear it here. Background 255, I'm going to remove the buffer, okay? And then everything here is going to remain the same. Here is going to remain the same. And I'm going to remove the delete mode because we're not going to be doing that anymore. All right, so we have the shapes, we have the rectangles, we can change colors, etc. And we can change. All right, beautiful. Okay, this is fantastic. So what else? I think we have a line mode that we forgot to implement. Let's implement line mode. You found me on the forums, Laramash. Yeah, that was for a plugin that I was working on a long time ago. Yeah, that was fun. Alrighty. So how are we going to implement line? We just need to add a new case. Okay. I think in short, whenever we want to add any new shape to the capacity of our drawing app, the first thing we need to do is to add a mode that allows us to set the shape mode to whatever this new drawing, line, polyline, spline, whatever, right? And then we need to do two things. First, we need to, when we let the mouse go, we need to, upon mouse release, we need to be able to create a new object of that type. So in this case, we have here, we have, I'm going to now create a line. You can see it here, and the shape is going to be of the type line. The first coordinate is going to be what I clicked before. The second coordinate is going to be what I'm clicking right now. And the stroke color is going to be, well, yep, and that is looking good to me. And the stroke color is going to be the color of the shape that we are drawing. And there's also going to be stroke weight, so how thick that line is. And we already had in the previous example this shape size, which was a variable that we're using. Maybe we should rename this. Probably shape size is not the best name anymore, but whatever, we're going to keep it for the time being. All right, so now we have been able to represent the shape of a line as all these parameters. And remember, even though for ellipses and for rectangles we were using x, y, w, h as the parameters that define those shapes, because this is JavaScript and it's object and it's JSON notation, it turns out that we don't strictly need to follow the same pattern of properties for all the shapes. A line does not have a width or a height, but a line has 2 points, and therefore the properties that we use to define that line are going to be called x1, y1, x2, y2, and it doesn't matter that they have different names than the other ones. In this case, perhaps the one name that we want to keep consistent across all objects is going to be the type, because the type is the parameter that we always use to make decisions about what to draw. So every shape should at least have a type so that I can decide, oh, if the type is ellipse or rectangle or whatever, draw different things. All right. So now, for example, case new line, I'm going to say that the stroke is going to have this, the stroke weight is going to be that, the line is going to be a line between the 4 coordinates that form those points. And probably for this one, I want no fill. All right. Beautiful. Is that true? So rectangle and then line. I'm going to draw a line, boom, and the line just shows up there. Fantastic. And then if I look at my document, you can see that I have the ellipse, the rectangle, and then, can I zoom in here? Yes, very good. You can see that I have the line, the line with different properties. So my document model is actually looking quite great so far. All right, beautiful. Before we move on, I have kind of neglected a little bit of this part, the part where we are drawing the shapes, these ones, the ones where I am still not releasing, but this is still not in the model. So before I let go, the part where we're temporarily drawing these shapes, okay? So right now we have this if else, if else, if else. Give me 1 second. I'm going to rewrite this to a switch case form so that it's a little cleaner. All right, so what am I going to do? Okay, last click. Alrighty. All right, rectangle and the line, stroke, width, no, shape size. All right, shape size. All right, and the ellipse. Okay. And if I change the colors, yes. Fantastic. Okay, so this is working well, I think. Beautiful. So what are we going to do then? We are now going to, what are we going to do? We're going to export as a JSON, all right? And then we're going to import as a JSON as well. That's going to be super, super fun. All right. Yes. Well, yes, yes. How are we going to do that? How are we going to do that? Would you change the background color via CSS or in the code? I will probably change it in the code. And actually, you know what? That's a very good idea. That is something that we could probably add to the document itself. That sounds about right. And we're going to do that to the document as well. All right. All right, so I rewrote it so that it looks a bit more like this. I find it more elegant and easier to read. So yes, so I'm going to leave that there. Now, as I am recording live this with people from the parametric camp community, team just gave me a really good suggestion, which is, well, what about the background color? Do we change the background color using CSS, HTML? The way you change the background color is by drawing the color of the background in the canvas. However, this, as I said, we're right now hard coding this to be the color white, but there's no reason why that should be the case. It turns out that the color of the background could also be a property that is part of this really larger database of properties that define the document where we're living in. So for example, something that we could do is we could say background color of the background color is going to be white. We add it to the document. And then here in background, what we do is we say doc background color, and then that becomes the color of our background. And therefore, if I want to change this to red, for example, I can do it here. And then if I want to change this to a very pale red, I can probably do like 63. Yeah? Actually, no, because background does not take transparencies. I'm sorry about that. So we can do, I don't know, pink. Can we do pink? I don't know. Ooh, I don't know what can we do. Okay. Yes. So bright red. Okay. Beautiful. So let me change that to, let me revert that to white. 255, 255, and then cancel this out. All right. We will use that later on. Fantastic. What is the next thing we're going to do? Well, this is where the cool things are going to start. So if you remember in the previous example, we do have the capacity to save our drawing to our system. Right now, if we press the letter F, what happens is that a file gets automatically, I'm going to remove all of this, a file gets automatically added to my downloads folder, and this file is basically an image screenshot of what I had on my canvas, correct? Now, this is great, but one of the beautiful things is that because the information for all these shapes is actually one that is numerically contained in this document object, something that we can do is we can also export the entire document as a JSON file. And JSON file is going to be very handy because it's basically going to be a list of all those numbers with all the properties, very similar to the one in the document model, that will be useful for us to maybe export these shapes to other programs, or to later read that file and deserialize those shapes and draw them on the screen. So how are we going to do that? Well, for saving, I'm going to say else, I'm going to add another mode here that is going to let me save this as a JSON file. So what am I going to do? If the key equals J for JSON, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use from P5.js. P5.js has a save JSON file, have JSON function, sorry, and the save JSON file function, excuse me, what it does is it takes a JSON object and then it saves it to your system. So now I'm going to save it as a file that is going to be called drawing, then it's going to have the date and time, and then it's going to have the extension JSON. All right, so let me draw a circle here and a rectangle here and a line here. So I have the three objects, correct? Now I'm going to press J, and you're going to see that in my downloads folder, I now have this JSON file. You can see, for example, the JSON file is much lighter than the drawing itself. And if I drop the JSON file on Visual Studio, you can see that I now have a JSON object that is basically the document. I have background color, I have all the shapes as an array, and I can now, because all of this is numerical information, what I can do is I can deserialize this and reverse engineer it. How does that work? Well, first of all, what I would like to do is I would like to come up with some kind of way to upload to my canvas a JSON file. All right. How are we going to do that? Well, it turns out that P5 allows us a very simple way to upload files to our canvas. This is actually very neat in the P5.js framework. So how does that work? Well, the way it works is that when we create a canvas, this function actually returns an instance of that canvas. So I'm going to say canvas equals the result of creating this canvas. And then to that canvas, we can attach behaviors. So for example, what I can do is I can say canvas.drop, and then I can attach a function that is going to be the function that is going to handle what happens whenever that file is loaded to the canvas, is dropped on the canvas. Right now, Copilot just came up with this. I'm going to call this parse file. And then what I'm going to do all the way down here, I'm going to write that function. I'm going to say parse file is going to be a function that is going to take a file. And then what we're going to do is, first of all, the easiest thing is I'm just going to print to the console what that file looks like. So console log file, all right? And then we're going to be able to understand the representation that P5 and JavaScript do of this file that I just dropped on the canvas. So let's see if it works. So now I have my JSON file. I'm going to drop it on the canvas. And you can see that immediately I have this dump here that is called the data. All right? Beautiful. So, and it has data, it has files. So it tells me when the file was modified. Can I make this a little bigger for all of you folks? Yes. When it was modified, the size, it tells me the type of file. It gives me a lot of metadata about the file. And then there is this property called data, which is actually the information that we have inside of the file. All right. So this is the information that I actually want to parse and that I want to attach to my document, correct? So what does that mean? So when I get the file, what I may want to do is I may want to do something where we say, for example, if the file that was downloaded, that was dropped was, for example, if file dot type equals application.json, right? For example, this could be one, or we could do, for example, subtype JSON. That also works. I can do subtype JSON. If the file is a JSON, not an object, not an image or whatever, what I can do is I can, for example, what can I do? What can I do? Let me think about this for a second, actually. What is the best way to do this? So does P5.js have any kind of load JSON, but that's probably a file, right? Loads a JSON from a file and URL and return an object. That's not what we want. Can this be done with SVG? Oh, you can totally convert from JSON to SVG and vice versa. Yeah. All right. Let me try something. So if I say doc equals file.data, is that going to work? Just like that? Okay, well, I need to modify this. It does work. Okay, beautiful. And then doc, no. Okay, and it does have the prototype. That's not great, but whatever. It's not a big deal, really. Oh, well, this still has the prototype anyway. Okay. Well, that makes life easier. So then we can do that. Yep. Yes, because we actually do have the entire file inside of the data property of the file. Then I think just basically saying that the document, the one that is the database of our shapes, is going to be equal to whatever is in the file in the data property. I think that's probably going to be the fastest way. And if I do this and I now drop the file, we're going to get an error assignment to constant variable. That probably is because here doc, I made it a constant variable. So I'm going to change it to a non-constant variable. And then I'm going to drop this. Whoa! How cool is that, right? I was able to load the file. So now I'm going to draw more stuff here, yellow stuff, more lines, etc., etc. So I'm going to make a really complicated object here, if you will. I'm going to now export it as a JSON file. So now I have a second JSON file here. I'm going to reload this, and now I'm going to drop my JSON file, boom, and I have my object there. How awesome is this? Beautiful. Again, remember, the idea here is that we have designed basically a data structure or a data schema is how this is sometimes referred to as well, that we can use to represent a document. The document being something that has a bunch of properties, for example, the background color, and then it has a large array with all the shapes in order that should be drawn in the screen. And then in our main sketch, or basically a sketch is a sketch that what it does is it listens to mouse interactions and then adds more properties to these shapes. And then with a large for loop, it handles reading each one of these shapes and strategically rendering it depending on the type of the shape. Okay? As you can probably imagine, this app can be extended in multiple ways. So for example, instead of just being constrained to ellipses, rectangles, and lines, we can extend this to polylines. So it's something that where we can click multiple times and then we create some kind of complex polygon. We could extend this to splines, so to have curves, all right? We could make this more interesting by having some kind of icon here that tells me where you're in rectangle mode. This is going to be the shape, this is going to be the stroke color, etc., etc. Something that is a bit more visual. And also, very interestingly, we can, because we already have all this information in JSON form, I think it would be pretty straightforward to export this information in SVG format. I don't know if you are familiar with the SVG format, but the SVG format is basically a standard for vector graphics on the web. So, which would make exchanging this file with other programs much easier. Okay, I don't know. We're gonna leave it here for this video, but I may make a second video where we expand this tool and we add all these extra features. Why not? Because it does sound cool. But as a basic, I'm going to leave it here. So this is going to be like intro to vector drawing, if you will. Maybe we make a second video where we add all these features. I don't know. Just stay tuned. And if you want to see if that video is available, maybe there is a card showing up on the corner. Maybe it will come next if you're watching this playlist video after video. We will see. I don't know. I have to think about that. Okay. But this is drawing vector shapes with a web-based app. I hope this was useful. I hope this was interesting. I hope this helped you understand how big corporate software like Adobe Illustrator actually works underneath. It is not that different from what you are seeing right now. It just has more options. It has a nicer, cleaner interface, but it's not web-based either, you know? So who knows? Something we could also do that would be super cool would be to make a collaborative drawing app where we have multiple people who are drawing on the same canvas and where the shapes are exchanged using WebSockets. Oh boy, we may have to do that. Boom. All right. Again, if we made that, it will be on the videos on this playlist at some point down the road. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to nerd out with drawing geometry with all of you. If you found this video useful, you may want to consider liking it, subscribing to this channel, saying hi, joining Discord, learning how to code, etc., etc. All right. Thanks a lot and see you in the next videos. Bye. Oh boy, now we have to make 2 more videos, which is not going to happen right now, but we can do them down the road. The one with vectors, the one where we do the collaborative drawing app, that actually does sound very cool. It does sound, we may have to do that because it's kind of cool. All right. Okay. All right, so now I have to record the introduction to this video, okay? We're going to record the introduction to this video. Okay. The intro to this video is going to be okay, so something like this. And then I'm going to clean this. All right, let's do the intro. I'm going to draw pcamp, so that, okay, so I'm going to do yes, so that's going to be line, no, okay, here, line, boop, beep, and then red, and then green, and then blue, and then orange. Oh, that was awful. And then rectangle, and that's going to be red. Okay. Maybe you could compare a bit how OpenGL, WebGL, oh my God, that's quite a lecture right there, Tim. But yes, maybe I could do that. All right, I'm going to do an ellipse. Okay, great. Let's start with let's record the intro to the video. Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in this series, how to make web-based drawing apps. In this video, I would like to continue with the technique that we followed in the previous one, where we are drawing shapes on a canvas using vector-like drawing, so click and drag interaction and that kind of stuff. However, I would like to teach you how to move from a memory model where we're working with pixels to one where we actually store all the information that relate to these shapes in a numerical form. So think about perhaps less pixels and more vector, or in other words, something that looks closer to the way Illustrator works than the way Photoshop works. And the advantages of this is that, for example, we can export this image now as a drawing, as a bitmap still, but we can also export it as a JSON object. And JSON object then becomes this numerical representation that contains all the shapes, right? That then will make it very easy to export or exchange with other programs, and that we can also use to reload this information. So for example, I can now drag and drop this JSON file, and because I have read all the shapes of the, I have, nah, damn it. Okay, so let me remove a bunch of lines here from the model. Okay, so I'm going to, exactly. I'm going to write this. I'm going to reload this. Exactly, parametric camp. You see how easy it was to now change and revert back? So let me start the video again. Let's do this over again. We could export to PDF as well. Hmm? Hello, this is Jose Luis here at Parametric Camp, and welcome to another video in our playlist, How to Make Web-Based Drawing Apps. In the previous video in this series, I taught you how to use this drag and drop metaphor to be able to draw shapes on a screen where you can click, drag, and it looks more like a vector-based drawing. However, internally, the only thing that we were doing was actually modifying the color of the pixels in our canvas. So what I would like to do in this video is work with a different model where instead of storing the colors of the pixels, what we're going to do is we're going to have a document model where we're going to store in a large array all the parameters and all the shapes that we have on our drawing. This is going to make our app behave less like Photoshop, like we used to do in the previous video, and more like Illustrator, if you will. And the advantages of that are going to be that not only can we still export a screenshot of the drawing that we just made, but we can also export that same drawing in vector form. So for example, I can export this as a JSON file. And if we open that JSON file, you can see that we have an object that contains a bunch of information about the background color of the document, all the shapes with their coordinates, their locations, etc., etc. And because we have this vector-based numerical representation, then now all of a sudden, this becomes a really easy way to, for example, exchange this file with other vector drawing applications like importing this in Rhino, Illustrator, etc., etc. Or even, for example, using some kind of drag and drop metaphor where we drop the JSON file in our canvas and then we read all those parameters and we render them on the screen. What we just saw was not uploading an image, but was actually uploading the JSON file, reading through all these shapes, and then rendering them on the screen. This is going to be a really cool video because it really gets into the nitty-gritties of how CAD software or vector-based drawing software actually stores representation of the geometry, and that will also be very helpful for developing more like a full-fledged vector-based drawing illustration application, if you will. So I think this might be the beginning of perhaps like a sub-series of things that we can do with vector drawing. I don't know where this is going, but I think it's going to be super interesting, and I really want to teach you how to do this. So let's get hands-on. Fantastic. I think we are good. Are we good? Yes. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. So that was very good. I'm very satisfied with today's live stream video. Alrighty. Any questions, comments, concerns? I have a couple minutes before I have to go. Hydration Nation. Who was that? I think that was La Marache. All right. Or Masha. Maybe it was Masha. All right. Beautiful. So I think, yeah, exactly. So I think this stream gave me a couple ideas. So I'm actually going to write them down before I forget. So in the streams, so maybe adding more shapes like polygons, splines, etc. We could do that. What else could we do? We could export to SVG, for example. That is something we could do. We could implement undo, so Control Z. That would be cool. We could add some visual feedback or shapes, colors, etc. in the UI. And what else? I wonder if this should be multiple small videos or it should be just one large video where we just implement a bunch of features. I think probably smaller videos makes sense. Oh, very good, Tim. We could definitely move shapes around and scale them and interact with them. That's a very good one. That was actually, I said that in the video. Layers. We could do layers. I'm gonna write it here. Layers, but oh, I'm not sharing. I'm not sharing. Wait, where is my screen? Yes. Layers. The thing with layers is that then we would have to implement some kind of UI where you can see the layers, where you can turn them on and off. You can drag them around, and then that in itself is going to become a rabbit hole, a massive rabbit hole. But the notion of layers is actually interesting. But it does require a lot of UI work to make the layers, to make sense of them, if you will. We could also export SVG, why not? The SVG part in itself is definitely a single video. So this could be one video. This could be another video. Maybe this is part of the same video. No, this is going to be its own video because it will require some work. Layers. Ah, what did you say there, Victor? You don't want me to see, huh? What else could we do? How could we extend this? Ooh, that could be that's going to be another rabbit hole. Zooming and panning on the document. That's going to be its own beast as well. That could work, but that could work. What is another vector format? What is HUID? What is HUD? HUD, what is that? Department of Housing and Urban Development in the US. HUD graphics. I don't know. Heads up display. What is that? You young people. Oh, I don't know what this is. You want to make like a combat drawing app, Tim? Oh boy. Okay. Like a dashboard display of the settings you choose. I think you're right. I think this is what I meant with some visual feedback for the shapes, the colors, etc. Like something where I have an interface where I'm seeing and I'm maybe even clicking different things. Yes. All right. OpenAI and start implementing the function that catches your internet one by one. Then we can stop paying Adobe. Well, but then you will start paying OpenAI. So the question ends up being, who do you choose to send your money to? And honestly, between Adobe and OpenAI, I'm not sure anymore. I don't know. Okay, well, we can. I mean, we still have. I mean, that this is already at least 3 or 4 videos. I wonder. Okay, I wonder if we're gonna do this. I wonder if it's worth just doing it well, and then we literally start a new section of the playlist where it is. We're just gonna make like a full-fledged drawing app, because the thing, for example, is that with what is it called? With with this shape-based document model, we could also insert images. We could also just drag and drop an image and have an image as an object and scale and move the object around, the image, I mean. So drag and dropping images into the model. And we could also have tiny places where we actually do more like brush-based drawing. That also works. Drag and dropping images into the model. Oh boy. Tiny brush-like drawing. This okay. This just became an entire full playlist right now. All right, let's do this. This is already a lot of work. Very interesting. I wonder. I'm going to do this right now. Connect to an AI model in the background. For example, OpenAI autocomplete. Oh no, the one, what is it called? OpenAI completion of a mask. That could work too. Anyway, that's super styluses. Do you mean like if you have a touch screen and you're drawing with a stylus? Is that what you mean? All right, this is already a lot. We basically just multiplied the playlist by two. So let me do this. These are a bunch of really good ideas, actually, but it's so much that I wonder if the drawing vector basically became like became like a teaser of what can be done. But then what we actually do is like we either create a new section where we just basically develop this entire app altogether. If we turn it into an example, so it's an exercise, like this one, exercise. So it's E2, Illustrator, online Illustrator, or for example, oh, I forgot, collaborative. Collaborative. Two apps working together via WebSockets. For example, if we do this, or I wonder if it's just better to create a new playlist where we basically develop a full-fledged drawing app with full-fledged drawing app with UI, etc., etc. I'm going to marinate this. I'm going to let it sit and feel where I want this to go. We can also have an offline conversation on Discord. What people think would be the best way to turn this into videos that can be consumed. I am leaning towards each one of these things being its own video. I believe it works better on YouTube to just have like tiny videos that focus on one thing and then multiple videos concatenated into a playlist. When people see like a 2.5 hour video, they're like, oh, someone killed me, you know? And so I think it's better. So I'm going to marinate what would be the best way to produce these videos and this exercise. We can probably discuss that over Discord if any of you have any ideas. And we will probably continue doing this Friday of next week. I may be traveling on Friday next week, but I don't know. It depends on the weather. I basically want to go skiing. But the weather has been fairly warm here in the northeast of the US this year, so it's not great for skiing, but we'll see. But if I don't, or if I do, maybe I do the live stream on Thursday. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, let's see how things go. All right, beautiful people. It was a wonderful pleasure. Love spending time with you. And as usual, stay tuned. Keep the conversation live on Discord. And I will see you next week, hopefully. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.